World-famous solo recording artist Garth Brooks was a talented musician, but few people knew about his secret double life. For years, he had been traveling from town to town, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. He was careful and meticulous, always covering his tracks and staying one step ahead of the law. But little did he know that Tom Segura, a hotshot detective from the big city, was hot on his trail. Segura had been tracking Brooks for months, piecing together the clues and following the trail of bodies. He was determined to bring the killer to justice, and he was getting closer every day. One night, Segura received a tip that led him to a small town on the outskirts of Nashville. There, he found a lead that would finally bring him face to face with Brooks. Segura knew that this was his chance to catch the killer, and he was ready to take him down. As he crept up on Brooks's hideout, he heard the sound of a guitar coming from inside. Segura drew his gun and kicked open the door, only to find Brooks sitting on a chair, strumming his guitar and singing one of his hit songs. "Garth Brooks, you're under arrest," Segura said, pointing his gun at the singer. Brooks looked up at Segura, a cold and calculating expression on his face. "I'm sorry, Tom," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "But I can't let you take me in." In a flash, Brooks leapt from his chair and lunged at Segura, his fingers curled into deadly claws. But Segura was ready for him, and the two men engaged in a fierce struggle. As they fought, Segura could see the madness in Brooks's eyes, and he knew that he had to end this once and for all. With a final burst of strength, he overpowered the singer and handcuffed him, bringing a brief end to his reign of terror. As Garth Brooks sat handcuffed in front of Tom Segura, the detective demanded that he tell him where the bodies were buried. "It's over, Garth, you have to tell me," Segura said, his voice cold and firm. "The families need closure." But Brooks just sat there, a smug smile on his face. "Why'd you do it, damn it?" Tom shouted. After a moment, Brooks slowly looked up and whispered, "To make you feel my love," his smile turning more sinister as the words left his mouth. Disgusted with his response, Tom unholstered his gun and put it to Garth's forehead. "Why should you have another day on this earth?" His finger trembles as it starts to slowly pull the trigger back. Brooks leans into the barrel of the gun, letting it press against his skin, and whispers, "If tomorrow never comes." Just then, backup arrives on the scene. Frustrated, Segura quickly aims just left of Brooks's ear and fires the gun. "Get this piece of shit out of my sight," Tom shouted to the arriving officers. Brooks was loaded into the back of a police car and they started down the road. But as Garth Brooks was being transported to the police station, he dislocates his thumb, freeing himself from the handcuffs, and retrieves a guitar string out of his pee hole and began strangling the police officer driving. The police car veered off the road and crashed into a tree, ejecting Garth and two officers through the windshield. He quickly got to his feet and ran into the woods, dodging bullets and evading the police, eventually fading off into the mist. Now on the run, Brooks began a new rampage across the country, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. He was more dangerous than ever, and the authorities were unable to track him down. As time went on, the legend of Garth Brooks the serial killer grew, and people whispered about his terrifying exploits in hushed tones. No one knew when or where he would strike next, and fear gripped the nation as the killer remained at large. Months went by and the trail grew cold as the murders seemed to stop. That was until one cold night, as a family slept soundly in their cozy home, they were suddenly awakened by the sound of a faint whisper coming from outside. They listened closely and realized that it was the voice of Garth Brooks, singing his hit song "I've Got Friends in Low Places." But before they could react, the window beside their bed suddenly shattered and Brooks burst into the room, a wild and maniacal look in his eyes. The family screamed in terror as he chased them through their home as they frantically tried to hide from Brooks. But Brooks was relentless, and he began smashing through the walls and doors, determined to catch his prey. The family knew that they had to escape. Just when they thought all hope was lost, they managed to get to the basement before Brooks could see where they went. They ran down the stairs and barricaded themselves inside, praying that Brooks wouldn't find them. For what seemed like hours, they waited in silence, listening as Brooks raged and ranted above them. They knew that they had to stay hidden and silent. Luckily, all the commotion was loud enough to arouse the suspicion of a neighbor, and they called the police to check on the family. Two officers came with their guns drawn. Brooks surrendered and the family's nightmare was over. Shaken but alive, they held each other a little tighter that night, knowing that they had survived a terrifying encounter with the notorious serial killer known as Garth Brooks. The officers were able to successfully take him into the station after checking his pee hole for spare guitar strings. Once at the station, Segura was alerted that the notorious country-singing serial killer had been apprehended once again and was awaiting his questioning at the station. Segura walks into the interrogation room. Well, looks like we meet again, Garth. You know, I really thought you were smarter than this. Trying to commit a triple homicide right down the street from the station? "I guess you just couldn't help yourself," Segura said as he lit his cigarette. Brooks remained silent, with a cold grin on his face. "Look, Garth, you don't want to be here and I don't want to be here, so let's just get down to it and tell me where the bodies are buried," Tom says as he blows a puff of smoke at Garth's face. "Who says I don't want to be here? Who says I'm not exactly where I want it to be?" Garth replies through a hideous smile. Tom looks puzzled by his reply. As it turned out, Garth Brooks's rampage across the country was not random at all. In fact, he had been carefully selecting his victims and the locations of their murders in order to construct a massive pentagram of death that spanned the entire US. For Brooks was not just a typical serial killer, he was a devout follower of the occult, and he believed that by sacrificing his victims and creating the pentagram, he would be able to open a portal to a hell dimension where he could draw the power of a demon god and use it for his own ends. "Well, I don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean, but you're not getting out of this again, Garth. You're going down," Segura says. "I ain't going down," Brooks says back to Segura as he smiles with a guitar pick in his teeth. He then swallows it, and begins choking. Brooks grins wickedly as he passes out and dies in front of Tom. The ritual was now complete. With the final sacrifice made, the pentagram was activated and the portal to hell began to open. A swirling vortex of dark energy appeared in the air above the station and the roof of the building began to crumble and fly upwards along with the body of Brooks. Garth was then brought back to life by the immense power of the hell dimension flowing through him. As the horrified officers looked on, Brooks began to grow and transform, his body twisted and mutated by the dark energy. He became a monstrous creature, a creature of pure evil, and he let out a roar of triumph as he realized that he had achieved his ultimate goal. Segura knew that he had to find a way to even the odds, and he quickly spotted a nearby military base. He raced towards it, dodging fireballs the whole way, hoping that he would be able to find a weapon or a vehicle that could help him in his fight against the demon. As he reached the base, Segura saw a massive, armored mech suit standing ready for battle. He quickly climbed inside and fired up the engines, ready to take on the demon in a final showdown. The two giants clashed, the demon's claws and fangs tearing at the mech's armor as Segura fought back with the suit's powerful weapons. Just then, Tom shot the demon in the face with a smoke bomb, obscuring the demon's vision and giving Tom the time he needed to sweep his legs and unleash a powerful punch to the face as the beast's head slapped the earth. Tom was hovering over him with his wrist cannon aimed squarely at the grotesque face of the demon. As Tom Segura stood victorious over Brooks, Brooks spoke up, his voice filled with malice. Brooks growled, "I've got friends in low places." No later than the words left his mouth, his eyes burst into flames and his body began to glow bright red. The intense heat began to melt Tom's mech suit and he was forced to tactically retreat. Segura looked up and saw a swarm of demons pouring out of the portal, covering the sky and the earth. He knew that he had to stop them, but he was exhausted and battered from his battle with the demon Brooks. He looked around desperately, trying to find a way to defeat the demons and close the portal. But it was too late, and the demons descended upon him, engulfing him in a writhing mass of darkness and evil. As the demons swarmed over the earth, terror and destruction followed in their wake. The world was plunged into chaos, and it seemed that there was no hope of defeating the forces of darkness. But in the midst of the darkness, a glimmer of hope remained. Tom Segura was still alive. As the demons swarmed around Tom Segura, he remembered something that gave him an idea. A few months ago, a custodian that worked for Brooks had posted a photo to Twitter of a shit that Brooks took on the floor of his private jet. The photo had gone viral, and people had been outraged at Brooks's behavior. Segura realized that this could be the key to defeating the demons. If he could remind people of how Brooks shit on the floor and then made a custodian clean it up, they would be outraged. His treatment towards the custodian could be enough to cancel him, which could deprive him of his demonic powers. With this plan in mind, Segura pulled out his phone and began frantically tweeting and posting to social media, reminding people of the photo and urging them to cancel Brooks. To his surprise, his plan worked. As people began to cancel Brooks and express their disgust with his behavior, thousands of blue beams of light shot from the phones of everyone that saw the tweets. The beams of light all concentrated into a bright blue orb of light. The orb grew brighter and brighter until finally it exploded and gave birth to a gigantic blue Twitter bird twice the size of Brooks. As the majestic blue bird flew close to the ground, Segura ran, jumped, and landed on its back, then flew to Brooks, grabbing him with the mythical bird's massive talons. Segura and Brooks quickly ascended high into the clouds where Segura instructed the bird to release the demon. As the giant demonic body flailed in the air falling back towards the earth, the bird tucked its wings and sped towards the falling demon. Just then, Segura summoned all of his comedic energy and shouted, "Don't be stingy." Just then a luminous blue beam of light shot from the bird's mouth and pierced the heart of the demon as they all hurtled rapidly towards the earth, the beam draining all of the demonic energy from Brooks. the demon began to shrink and shrivel, losing its powers and its form. Eventually, the demon was reduced to a small, powerless figure. And as the frail body of Brooks impacted the earth, it bounced and tumbled, finally coming to rest against a tree. As Brooks's broken and battered body struggles to stay conscious, he looks up just in time to see Segura looming over him. "Well, I've already beat you, I guess now it's just time to piss on you," Segura says as he begins to shower Brooks in a hot golden downpour of piss, which dissolves the mangled body of Brooks, ridding the earth of his evil once and for all. As the dust settled, Segura looked around at the devastation and knew that he had saved the world. He then looks at the audience, breaks the fourth wall, and begins to read an ad for Saba mattresses, finishing by saying, "And don't forget to enter our special YMH promo code, THESHIT, for $200 off your order."